So I was looking at my plant collection the other day, just, going through stuff, and realized I've imported an incredible number of plants. I thought what would be fun today is to share with you every single plant I've imported throughout my plant journey, how they rehabbed, how they adjusted to living in my house, how I keep them today, and where are they now. Sort of, where are you now of plants, but plants, strictly plants that I've imported. As I started doing this process and going through them, I realized just how many I've imported over the years. It's more than I thought. And I wouldn't be surprised if I've missed one or two here or there, or if there are a couple that just got completely forgotten. But anyway, to the best of my knowledge, these are all the plants that I have ever imported. This is how they're doing now. This is what happened to them and how it went. So before we do that, let me set the scene a bit and tell you a little bit about my importing journey. I started growing plants in 2020 during the pandemic. So spring 2020 or summer really, let's say summer 2020, I officially made the deep dive into collecting a bunch of plants. And I spent that first year just getting comfortable with them, figuring out my watering habits, my lighting. And in that time, I developed a collection of, Monstera, a couple of philodendrons, some snake plants, your typical bits and pieces. But, I've been seeing anthuriums and things like that online, and I thought they were quite interesting. However, back then, it was difficult to procure some of these plants. I mean, you just couldn't walk into a plant store and find them. First of all, plant stores were closed anyway, but even when things were open, you just couldn't find some of these things, right? And so after a little bit of digging, I realized that people were importing these plants. I'd had no idea that was an option. So I thought, oh, how fun and how cool to try to import some. And so I looked through my options, and as far as I could tell, people seem to be by and large importing from either Indonesia or Ecuador. After doing a little bit of digging, it seemed like the Indonesian option would require a little bit more legwork on my end. I would have to procure a phytosanitary certificate, and I don't know, it just seemed, for someone like me who hadn't done it before, it seemed really daunting. The Ecuadorian option, on the other hand, was basically, at the time, everyone was importing from the one company, Ecuagenera, and they took care of all the paperwork for you. So that was super attractive to me. The idea that I could just choose my plants and they would take care of the paperwork and the phytosanitary certificate, and it would basically feel not particularly different from just buying plants online here in the US. So that to me was the obvious way to get my feet wet on importing. So towards the end of 2021, I jumped on Ecuagenera's website and looked for some plants to import. I had no idea what I was doing, zero idea. I just jumped up and decided to import a bunch of plants. I made that first order in December 2021, and Ecuagenera was having a pop-up in New Jersey in January. So I thought, in order to reduce the risk of the plants getting frozen or me worrying about them being delivered in winter, I thought it would be best to just pick them up at the pop-up in New Jersey. I jumped on their site, I ordered 8 plants, paid for them, you use PayPal, the whole thing was super seamless, straightforward and easy. And now was the waiting game, right? And in January 2022, in the middle of a snowstorm, I dragged my 9-year-old daughter all the way to literally the end of New Jersey. It's 2 hours into New Jersey. I dragged her 2 hours into New Jersey with me to pick up this batch of plants that I had imported. Super exciting, right? Brought them all home. Now, in preparation for the import, I had done some research and come to the conclusion that I wasn't going to be able to acclimate these plants without a grow tent. So I purchased a grow tent, the smallest one that you can buy. This is what it looks like. I put it up on screen, hopefully. If I didn't manage to put it up on screen, pretend I did. These are the dimensions. It's the smallest one you can find, and honestly, it's the best grow tent option if you live in an apartment because it's small, it can fit, you can kind of stick it away. If I had a spare closet, I could even just shove it in there and hide it because grow tents are a little bit ugly. I had considered the option of an IKEA cabinet or something like that, but I decided that that just wasn't for me because I just didn't want to deal with worrying about the plants getting fungal, and I just felt like I would be able to manage the airflow in a grow tent better. It also is just more efficient, isn't it? So I thought I would use the grow tent to acclimate them, but my intention was just to grow the plants out in the open in my living room. I didn't want them hidden in the tent. So I thought I'll acclimate them in the tent and then slowly move them out into ambient with the rest of my plants, and they'll be fine. Everything will be fine. When I got there, in addition to the plants that I had selected to buy, that I had purchased already, I realized that you could buy some plants on the spot. So I chose 3 or 4 more plants then and there, picked those up and brought them home with me. So let's have a look at that batch of imports and see where those plants are today. The first ever plant that I imported was an anthurium. I did some research to find out which anthuriums were the easiest to take care of. I really wanted to get into them, but it just seemed so intimidating and daunting. I didn't know where to begin. And all the information online said that number 1, hands down, the easiest anthurium to take care of is Anthurium crystallinum. So I ordered an Anthurium crystallinum. Now, this is it. This is what it looked like. It was it is beautiful, beautiful, beautiful plant. Like all my other imports, I cleaned the roots. I acclimated it I put it in water for 24 hours just to kind of rehydrate those roots. And then I potted it up I put it in perlite. I put it in perlite and I gave it a reservoir of water. So I just put I put it in perlite, and it had a reservoir of water, and the goal was to encourage it to root. Now I also had an aquarium bubbler and an air stone, and I put this air stone into the reservoir to oxygenate that water, and that worked like a charm. So this crystallinum rooted beautifully in the perlite, right? And it did really well. It put out a new leaf. I think very, very quickly it was growing fat, beautiful green roots and a new leaf. Where is the crystallinum today? How's it doing today? Anybody who knows me knows my track record with Anthurium crystallinum is shocking. Shocking! I don't know what it is with me and Anthurium crystallinum, but I've had a few. The minute I buy them, they're happy, they do well, and then boom, they decline. I've imported them, I've bought them locally. I don't know what it is. I have some kind of problem with this anthurium. There's like a mental block there, and I can't grow it. I don't know why. So anyway, suffice to say that this was the first anthurium. No, I don't know if it was the first to decline in my care, but it's not with us today. It's gone. I think it got stem rot. I don't remember. I don't remember what happened. I don't remember whether it perished when I transferred it to open air or whether it perished in the grow tent while it was acclimating. I have no idea. I literally couldn't tell you. All I know is it's May 2024 and I don't have that Anthurium crystallinum. So yeah, right off the bat, the first export ever was the first plant I chose from export is no longer with us. So that is, yeah, that's it. She's gone. R.I.P. Anthurium crystallinum. Now the second plant on that list of imports is a philodendron pastazanum. I chose this plant because of Amanda, formerly of Plantarina and now with Make It with Amanda. She had the most beautiful pastazanum and it was huge and insane. I saw it on her channel and I think on her Instagram page, and I said to myself, I have to have this plant. Now, at this time, Philodendron Dean McDowell was rare, it wasn't a thing, and I just thought the only way to get those massive, beautiful, crazy leaves was to get a pastazanum. So I thought, I'll order a pastazanum. So I got that. The pastazanum, I rooted it in water. I didn't do perlite, I just put it in water. And to this day, this is the method that I use for all my philodendron imports, or really any kind of rehab philodendron. I just stick it in water for a few weeks. Sometimes with a bubbler and an air stone, and sometimes not. Sometimes just plain water, and they just root like mad. Philodendrons are fine. So philodendrons and water propagation are best friends. So yeah, I rooted this pastazanum in water. It actually was probably the quickest of the imports to bounce back. Like it grew roots really quickly. I potted it up. But of course, it was the dead of winter. I think I potted it up and I pulled it out here in open air and it was fine. It was doing really well. And then I think I had a bunch of plants in here had spider mites. and I think, or maybe it was thrips. It was my first time dealing with one of them or the other, so I had to chop it in half and then potted it back up, and it was fine. It did okay. It never looked stunning, right? It never got to the point where I said to myself, this plant is glorious, it's gorgeous, and I see why I bought it, it's spectacular. But you know, I dealt with it. It was fine. It had a few leaves, and so I put it in the corner of my apartment under, I wouldn't say under a grow light, but next to a plant that's growing under a grow light. And I left it there where it did its thing and it was doing okay. Where is it today? Last year I was purging some plants and I looked at the pastazanum and I looked at myself and I realized that this plant does not bring me joy. It's just okay. It never became anything other than gangly and kind of, it was okay. It wasn't too ugly, it wasn't pretty. It was just there. I never really gave it a second thought. It's the type of plant that I almost never remembered I had. And so I purged it, I got rid of it, gave it away, and I no longer have this plant today. So this is not an RIP, but it's an exited from my jungle. It was excused from my jungle. So bye bye. Yes, while it's hopefully still with the living, with the person I gave it to, it's not in my jungle anymore. So would I import that plant again? No. But things are different today. You probably can get pastazanum. Actually, it's sort of gone in a big circle because pastazanum became really easy to get and then now it's difficult to get again. I still don't think I would get it today because it's a crawler and crawling plants take up more space than is ideal for my apartment and the size of plants that I have. So I have to really try to limit the number of crawlers that are in here. So, you know, okay plant, pretty enough, but I don't need it. The third plant on the list of imports was Philodendron gloriosum. Now at the time, gloriosum was a dream plant. Impossible to find here locally, impossible. The only way to get hold of one was to import it. In fact, I think gloriosum might have been the reason why I imported anything to begin with. I was so excited to get this plant. At the time, people were talking about different forms of gloriosum. Dark veins, light vein. I just wanted one. I saw so many beautiful ones on Instagram and I wanted one for myself. So yes, I imported it. Now, I opened the package and I was expecting a medium-sized gloriosum, but instead I received two that were on the smaller side. So they gave me two small ones instead of one medium one. At the time, I was a little bit disappointed because I thought to myself, well, it's going to take ages. Gloriosum is a notoriously slower grower, and it's going to take ages for this to do anything that I wanted to do. So I was sort of disappointed, but it rooted really quickly in water without a problem. I potted it up and I switched it to aroid mix reasonably quickly. I think I pulled it out of the tent after a few weeks and potted it up in aroid mix, and it was off to the races, to be honest. So I ended up potting up two different plants. The tiny one I potted up and I grew that one on a shelf in my bedroom for the longest time. Where is it now? It outgrew the shelf in my bedroom. I took it to my office. A friend at the office really liked it, and so I ended up giving it to her. So I gave it away. So I no longer have that baby gloriosum, but it was the cutest cutie. Look at it. This was just a couple of months ago. It's so cute. Just there isn't space for it on the shelf in my bedroom anymore. It's surpassed the stage of being a tiny cute little cutie. So I've sent it on to someone who will love it more. The second one I potted up and it was growing under a very dim grow light, actually. The GE, I think it's 10 watt or something. It's not a very powerful grow light at all. But then it sort of grew funny and gangly out of the pot. I don't have room for long planters for the most part, so I didn't have it in one of those. It grew out of the pot, so I decided to propagate it. So here I am propagating it. And I chopped it up into, I think it was like 4, 5, 6 pieces maybe. And they all rooted, lickety split, they rooted very quickly and I potted them all up. I potted 3 of them together into one plant, potted 1 into a separate plant, and then the remaining 2 I gave away. I basically at that point had 2 plants. Where are my philodendron gloriosums today? How are they doing? Well, this is the smaller plant. Since I propagated it, it's put up 2 more leaves and it's working on its 4th one, so it's coming into its own. This is such an easygoing plant. It's still nice and small. Again, as this gets bigger, I'm probably going to end up giving it away if I can't justify keeping it, because I mean, I guess it's always good to have doubles, but I don't know, gloriosum is stunning, but it just grows so obnoxiously, it takes over. Anyway, this is the small one. I think it's really cute, right? If you're enjoying the video so far, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future offerings from me. And this is the big boy. Well, it's not that big of a boy, but this is the main plant. It's doing phenomenally well. It has 1, 2, there are three growth points in this pot that I can see. I think there might be a 4th one in here, but it's not obvious to me. Anyway, there are 3 main growth points, and it's not the fastest grower, but it's also not under the strongest grow light. So I don't know. I think it's doing just fine. This is what it looks like today. Can you believe it? Now the 4th plant I ordered was the Anthurium waterburyanum, and there wasn't much information about the Anthurium waterburyanum out there. To be honest, there's not much information about it out there today. So when I ordered this plant, I had no idea whether it was easy care or difficult or anything about it. It just looked pretty, so I ordered it. I propagated it in perlite, which is what I did with all the anthuriums in that first batch. So I propagated it in perlite, and it rather quickly put out some leaves. So it was doing well in the tent in perlite, so I left it in there. I think I had been moving plants out of the tent one by one, but I didn't move this one. I left it there in perlite for quite some time. And this is because I wasn't sure how it was going to react to ambient air. Now, I had bought these plants in the dead of winter without thinking about how hard it is for plants to adjust to the dryness of a New York City winter. In those days, I had 2 humidifiers running. I don't have a humidifier today because honestly, I can't be bothered with all the cleaning of all the parts. But I had 2 humidifiers, but they weren't really doing too much to raise the humidity. So I think I was nervous to move it out. My crystallinum had declined sharply and brought me back to earth. So I think I decided to leave it in the perlite for a while. I left it in the tent. And then I eventually potted it up in a very, very gritty aroid mix in a net pot. So I had it in one of these black net pots, and it was doing well in the grow tent, just popping out new growth. It adapted really quickly. It was actually a reasonably fast grower. Not super fast, but you know, it was putting the leaves, the new leaves were beautiful, and I was feeling good about myself. I was very proud of this plant actually. And so I think after several months, I decided to try it in open air. Woo! The plant said, "You shall be humbled." Humbled, because it got crispy. It got crispy. I wasn't sure whether it was the type of light I was giving it. I didn't know if it needed more humidity. I wasn't sure if I was watering it correctly. The roots looked okay. They weren't particularly fuzzy. You know, it was very hard to gauge whether I was doing the right thing or not. So I struggled with it in open air for some time. It was crispy. It was still alive, but it was crispy, didn't look very nice, and it didn't put out any new growth. Eventually, I got tired of looking at it and I threw it back in the grow tent. Within a week of being in the grow tent, it threw out a new leaf. So I knew that it was very unhappy with the low humidity in the apartment. So I thought, okay, looks like this is a grow tent plant. And so it was doing fine in the grow tent. It had a couple of leaves, but I wouldn't say I looked at it and thought this guy is thriving. And then one day I had the sort of realization that the potting media wasn't quite right for it, but it was too chunky, especially when partnered with being in a net pot, because the net pot, you know, was extremely airy. When you have chunky media and a net pot, you're basically setting up a scenario where you're going to need to water that plant like every day. Like if it was growing outside and it was getting rained on, I think it would thrive in that mix and in that pot. But that's obviously not the case in my indoor settings. And so it's just another example of how there isn't really one size fits all advice on how to best grow your anthuriums. But I didn't know that at the time. At the time, I was the type of grower that wanted someone to tell me, this is how many times a week you need to water your plant, and this is how many foot candles of light you need to give it, and this is how much, I wanted very concise information on how to care for plants. I wanted it to be very, very straightforward and logical, almost like a table. And plants are not really like that. You kind of have to feel your way along a little bit and not worry about it so much. I repotted it eventually into a mix that had some tree fern fiber in it. As soon as its roots hit the tree fern, they took off. It went nuts. So it was really happy in the tree fern fiber, and it was growing really well, put out beautiful leaf, like a couple of really nice leaves. It still wasn't the easiest plant to care for. It was quite demanding of water, even in the grow tent. So, it was I couldn't just ignore it. I had to kind of be on top of my care of it. And then it was growing upwards, needed a bit of support. So I added a pot extender to it and filled that with even more tree fern aroid mix, because that's what you do. So where is my Anthurium waterburyanum today? Here she is. Here she is. Here she is. She's currently living her best life in my grow tent as one of my pride and joys. I have a few pride and joys. This is one of them. I mean, I'm sorry, but this plant has made, every time I look at it, I just think this plant was absolutely worth all the hassle, right? Worth all the stress. It's been 2.5 years of grinding, and I just feel so proud every time I look at it. I've accepted that this is just a grow tent plant, that I can't grow it in open air in my apartment. Maybe if I lived in Florida or Georgia, it would be possible, but in New York City, that doesn't seem to be possible. I'm happy to be corrected if anyone has had a different experience. If anyone has been able to acclimate this to ambient, let me know and I'll try again. But I don't know, I'm honestly reluctant to bother because the leaves are so pretty, and I just don't want to worry about crispy leaves when they're so big. When a big leaf is super crispy, it's so ugly. I can't be bothered. So this is what it looks like. This is the root system. To be honest, it's not that much, doesn't even have that many roots, right? Look at it. It needs a moss pole. I have not done that yet. It has 2 pot extenders stacked, and it's obviously very happy with that arrangement and with this potting mix that I used, because for the first time its roots have fuzz and fur on them. That's how I know the roots are really happy. They're very fuzzy. So obviously this particular potting mix that I used is the right one. And so, who knows, maybe it would do all right in open air again, but I don't care to find out. I'm not willing to chance it. This leaf just came out. I watered this plant 2 days ago and there was no leaf, so look at that. It's just popped out a new leaf, but we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it does. But this is Anthurium waterburyanum. I mean, what a baddie. Isn't she beautiful? I love her. And plant number 5 out of the plants that I imported from that batch was the Philodendron El Choco Red. Now, along with gloriosum, El Choco Red was one of those plants that I was seeing everywhere on everyone's timelines. It was so popular at that time. It had this stunning, it looked quite similar to a gloriosum, but then just had this stunning red back. It was so pretty, so beautiful. And so I ordered that one, got it, and I was really excited about it. Can you tell where this is going? This is one of those times when I won't even keep you in suspense. I think I posted on my Instagram when I got the El Choco Red. I think I posted on my Instagram story as one of the ones that I was super excited about. Someone commented, be patient with the El Choco. And that should have warned me of what I was getting into, right? I should have known then what I was in for. So I kept the El Choco in water, as was my rooting habit. I don't think I had the bubbler in there. I think the bubbler was occupied. So pretty soon it started rotting. I don't think it made it out of the tent. The leaves fell off, but imported philodendrons will do that. They'll often drop leaves quite quickly. So I wasn't alarmed by the leaves falling off, but the plant, the root system, all of it rotted very quickly. Even I had cleaned it, I had used peroxide, I'd done all the things that you're supposed to do, but it very quickly got stem rot. Root rot, I can handle, that's fine, but once the stem starts rotting, what can you do? I tried everything I could think of. I didn't really have much experience, to be honest, so really it was sort of throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. But very quickly it declined, and yeah, it was gone. I think the El Choco Red was the first of the plants to go. It went quicker than the crystallinum. Where's the El Choco Red today? She's gone to plant heaven. She's no longer with us. R.I.P. El Choco Red. She's done. I never imported or bought another El Choco Red again. I think I'm just traumatized by that. It just went so quickly. I probably could have tried again once I had more experience, or just bought one locally and it would have been fine. But to be honest, I like the El Choco Red, like I think they're pretty, but I wasn't as bothered. Very quickly I lost interest in that style of plant. So I don't have Philodendron El Choco Red, but you know, it was a valuable learning experience, I suppose. The sixth plant that I imported from that batch is another anthurium. And this was my first experience with a pendant anthurium, with something that had strappy leaves. Again, I knew nothing about this plant or how to grow it, but I saw someone on Instagram, an artist, she had one and it was spectacular. So I thought, oh, get me one of those. So I imported Anthurium pallidiflorum. And this is what it looked like when I got it. It had a couple of leaves. It was a baby. It was a very beautiful baby though. I think this is one of those plants that you have to see in person to genuinely understand just how stunning it is. It is an absolutely beautiful plant. I acclimated it like all the other anthuriums I had in perlite. This one acclimated like a dream. It rooted like crazy. I had it in a net pot in perlite and it grew really, really well, very quickly. And I soon transferred it into aroid mix, but it was still in a net pot. And I brought it out into my bedroom where it was, honestly, it was thriving, it was fine. So I had it in my bedroom and the roots were growing out of the net pot and into almost like a water reservoir in the bottom, just because I never got around to switching it. Again, this is one of those plants that I had in that very, very, very chunky mix. So when I first started growing anthuriums, I looked up all sorts of recipes for aroid mix, and this mix that I was using had big hunks of orchid bark, perlite, and houseplant soil. And it was too chunky. Now that I know what I know, for my environment, a mix like that just doesn't work. So I no longer use orchid bark. If I'm gonna use bark, it'll be bark fines. So I use very fine bits of bark in mixes for some plants, but I don't even use that for anthuriums, to be honest. I think I use that for Monstera, sometimes for philodendron, but not for anthurium. But this mix, it was so chunky that I think the roots couldn't really draw up the moisture that they need. Anthurium pallidiflorum is a thirsty, thirsty, thirsty plant. It needs a lot of moisture. As you can imagine, the leaves are quite long and they move tons of water. So this is a plant that every time I walked by it, I was having to water it because it was in this really chunky mix. And then it was also in a net pot, which compounded that effect. Anyway, a few weeks ago, I decided to just take the risk. And after like a couple of years of being in this weird setup, it was growing really well. It had lots of leaves, very beautiful plant. But the leaves were stopping at, I would say they would be like 2 feet long, maybe 2.5 feet, no longer than that. So I had lots of leaves, but they weren't very, very long. And that's because obviously there's only so much water that the plant could take up to support those leaves. So I decided to repot it into my tree fern aroid mix. So tree fern and mixed with aroid mix, although on this occasion I think I used orchid mix. I'm using Very Plants orchid mix at the moment, and I repotted it into that. with the tree fern. I'll link the video below of me repotting it so you can see. I had to cut the pot off, I had to do all sorts, and I was quite nervous to repot it, to be honest, because it had not been repotted in a couple of years, and I just was worried that the roots, most of those roots had grown in water, and I was worried that they wouldn't really make the transition safely. Well, here's my Anthurium pallidiflorum today. This is what she looks like right now. She not only took to the repot, she's absolutely thriving. She's loving life in her new pot. This repot happened about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and look at the roots that she has on her already. These are all new roots. These are all new roots. None of these were there. So these tiny ones in here are the roots that she already had. And these fat boys are the ones after the repot. And they're completely insane. She's very happy. She's sporting 2 inflorescences at the moment. She gets quite a few of those. Yeah, she has these 2. I think these were already here. One of them is new. The other was already here when I was repotting it. She is starting to let go of these 2 leaves. This leaf, this is the original leaf that the plant came with when I imported it. So it's been hanging onto this leaf for all that time. This is the first leaf, long leaf. It grew in my care. So yeah, it's okay for it to let that go. And it's doing super well post repotting. It's growing a new leaf. This is the newest leaf. I don't know if this one is going to be particularly much longer because it was already coming out by the time I repotted it, but we'll see. It's already looking pretty long and it's still brand new, so we'll have to see how this does. It's still quite a thirsty plant, but it does hold moisture a lot better, and so the root system is very happy. It's stunning as ever. This is probably the easiest plant of all the imports. This one has bounced back the easiest. Like, it never for one day in my life has ever given me an ounce of trouble. It's the easiest anthurium out there. It's so easy to care for. It lives under a Saltex Solutions Vita Grow Light in my bedroom, so it doesn't get any natural light. It literally only gets grow light and lots of water, and obviously, like any anthurium, a good amount of fertilizer. I'm using Dynagrow Foliage Pro at the moment, so lots of fertilizer, lots of water, and a good plastic clear pot so you can see what the roots are doing. But she is a true joy to grow. If someone asks me where to start with anthuriums, I usually say try pallidiflorum. It's so unusual that you can enjoy it, but it's also super easy to grow if you can find it. So yeah, this is one of my most successful imports. The next plant on the list was a Philodendron rubrijuvenile platinum. Now this plant I saw on the Ecuagenera website. I bought it just because I liked the way it looked on the website. The leaf shape looked really interesting. It was this deep glossy color, and I'd never really seen anything like it. Honestly, by and large, I still really haven't seen much like it out there today. I thought it was stunning, so I bought it. I couldn't really find much information about it. The only little information I found suggested that it would be quite difficult to care for. So I wasn't really expecting much, but again, I used the bubbler in water method, and surprisingly, this one rooted very easily also. I ended up potting it up, and I eventually gave it a moss pole because I wasn't sure if it was a crawler or a climber. There wasn't any information out there about it, but I knew that I didn't have the space to be growing multiple crawlers, so I wanted it to climb. I gave it a moss pole. It grew these enormous, when I say enormous glossy leaves. Like, have a look at this. It was spectacular. I took it from this, which is pretty enough, to this, which was incredible. It had these glossy, massive, beautiful leaves. It was growing in my bedroom. And then, almost overnight, I was looking at it knowing full well that this plant probably needs a repot. because even though I was growing it as a climber, I think by nature it definitely, it's semi-crawls, it's not a true climber, and the root system is probably quite big. I wouldn't know because I haven't checked since the day I potted it up. I've never repotted it or checked the roots, which is bad. Don't do that. The soil is obviously depleted of nutrients, the whole thing. And so it suddenly declined, actually. It got spider mites, some of the leaves got crispy, they were watered erratically over the summer while I was traveling, and it was just looking really sad. So I chopped all the leaves off, took it back to zero, and then I proceeded to ignore it, which is really bad. But sometimes that happens. I fell out of love with the plant and I was just ignoring it. Anyway, I recently brought it out of the bedroom and just popped it in a corner, in a random corner in the living room, close to a grow light, but not under one at all, next to my ficus undulata. And I walked by the other day and it randomly has a leaf. This is what it looks like right now. And it has this leaf. And if I look at the leaf, I can see some dots. Like obviously there are probably a couple of spider mites at play here. It's still not 100% happy, but it's still kicking. So evidently it's quite a hardy plant, and I'm planning to award its resilience and its zest for life by going back to watering it, and I'll probably refresh the soil. I don't think I'll give it a new pot per se, but I will give it fresh potting soil. It deserves that much. So Philodendron rubrijuvenile platinum is still with us, barely. It's hanging in there. If it's green, it's still keen, right? And the 8th and final plant that I ordered from this batch is an Anthurium forgetii. Now, if anyone knows anything about Anthurium forgetii, you know that this plant is not easy to acclimate. For whatever reason, it just takes its time getting its footing. This is true whether you import it, whether you buy it locally, whatever. It just takes a while to adjust to your surroundings. I think if I was someone who grew in pond or something like that, it would probably adjust a lot more easily. The watering schedule that it needs is specific. But when it adjusts, it becomes hardy. It's just, if you buy it and it's grown in different circumstances from what you're growing it in, you're just gonna have to wait a while. So if you have patience for some ugly leaves for some time, it will probably be okay eventually. But at the time that I bought it, did I know that? No. So I acclimated it in perlite. It was doing okay. It didn't have any new leaves, but it had some new roots. It was doing okay. And I brought it out of the tent and put it out here, but still in the perlite. I have no idea why I did that. I just think in hindsight, my mistake was not understanding that this is a plant that's so sensitive to change that you need to just put it somewhere and forget it and not keep moving it. So after the acclimation, I probably should have potted it up in the final medium and then put it where I was going to put it. Instead, I moved it out here in the perlite. Then I repotted it from perlite into, regular soil mix, but then it was still winter. There were things, and it wasn't happy. It wasn't happy. So the plant suffered. It died back to a tiny little nub, right? It went all the way back to a tiny nub. But I wasn't giving up, so I planted that into a small pot. I chopped off any of the bits that were rotten. I put it in a small pot and I put it back in the grow tent, and it started off okay. It put out a leaf and then another one. They were tiny, but they were okay. But out of nowhere, those leaves started struggling. Forgetii will do that, right? You'll think it's okay and then it'll just get weird. So it started struggling and I couldn't figure out why. Eventually, it struggled, it lost both those leaves, it died back to a tiny nub. So for the 3rd time, I took that and I cut off all the rotten bits and I put it in a small plastic container box, with a clip, like a takeout box with a see-through lid. I put it in there with some tree fern. So I basically rested it on top of the tree fern just ignored it. I threw it on a shelf somewhere and forgot about it. And 2 months later, there were some roots and another 2 months after that they were the tiniest of leaves. And eventually I transplanted it into this tiny pot, small pot. Here it is. This is what it looks like today. Tiny but mighty. So it's basically 2 plants now. Now this would be much bigger than this if I had up-potted it by now. So it's basically in pure tree fern fiber, which is fine. But it really, really needs me to cover these bits where the aerial roots want to grow. It needs to be repotted. Those need to be covered with substrate, and it needs to have more nutrients so that it can grow big and strong. And by I say it, but I mean they, because one plant has become 2. It popped. So yeah, after 2 years, it's still here, believe it or not. So even though this plant is temperamental, to acclimate and annoying, it is actually quite resilient in terms of it just keeps coming back. It's with us still. I need to be transplanting this soon. This is the newest leaf on one of them. This is the newest leaf on the other. They're still small. They just came out, so they're still expanding in size. But yeah, this is ready for a big boy pot. So I'll probably do that this weekend. I'm happy I didn't give up on this one. I'm happy she didn't give up on me. So, Anthurium forgetii is still with us. While I was in New Jersey at the Popup, I realized that you can buy plants that you didn't order and pay for already. So at the Popup itself, obviously, in addition to the plants that I had already ordered and paid for, I could buy some more in person. And so I picked out 3 more plants while I was there that looked really nice, and I just wanted to try them out. I knew nothing about these plants, I just bought them. I'm one of those buy something and figure it out later kind of people when it comes to plants, which is not always ideal, but it has worked out for the most part. I think as long as it's not super expensive and you can afford to experiment with it, I don't think it's that big of a deal. That's the fun of plants. I bought an anthurium regulosum, an anthurium angamacarnum, and an anthurium metallicum. None of those 3 are with us today. What? First of all, those 3 plants are not easy to grow. They're not easy to grow. So I should not have been getting those on the first import. If I could do it over again, I probably wouldn't have gone with them. But also, those are 3 plants that have quite specific needs. And again, I was still very much in my do all the research, follow all the information you can find stage of growing plants. And so I just think I overthought it with them. Instead of letting the plant tell me what it needed or what it wanted, I was too worried about what other people said would or would not work with it. The anthurium regulosum was growing in water. I acclimated that one in water. I don't think I did perlite with that one. I think I just did straight to water. This is an anthurium that grows in cloud conditions. It's corrugated. It's notoriously difficult. I knew from my research that it was tricky to grow, but I also, thinking back, I also do have, even though I didn't have the high humidity, I did have the cooler temperatures. So I think with adjusting for watering, if I just watered it more frequently, it probably would have been fine. I think I was overthinking. In the earlier days of growing anthuriums, I overthought the humidity side and I worried about it too much. And I basically loved that plant to its demise because it went downhill so quickly. A regulosum will go from being great to melting almost overnight. It just went down like that. The metallicum was okay. My mistake was not immediately, I should have repotted it into a mix that I had made myself. So I got it was okay, and then it wasn't, and then it just did nothing for a really long time. And I think I eventually just got fed up and chucked it, really. I think it was a dud. I think the brutal truth is when it comes to importing plants, personally, what I've noticed is you're better off ordering them and picking them up at the Popup. Anytime I purchase plants on the spot at the Popup, they don't do as well. Sorry, Equa, don't come for me, but that's just the truth. Like, whenever I order plants from Ecuagenera, if they get delivered or if I pick them up at the pop-up, they actually are really good. They do well. But when I just pick from what they have there, when I go there in person and I just choose stuff, it's never as good. I don't know why. I'm not sure if it's maybe the plants have been through stress while being set up for the pop-up or what the story is, but I haven't had as much success with those. So now I just stick to ordering and just, you know, I just stick with what I order. It works out better for me. So the regulosum is no longer with us. The metallicum is no longer with us. The angamacarnum came to me with spider mites, which is weird for an anthurium, right? But also it was just a weird fussy plant. It's one of those that was labeled as angamacarnum, but I don't think it is. Ecuagenera has a few of those no ID type anthuriums that they call angamacarnum 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you know, SP, AF, whatever. They're not sure what they are. And this was one of those. I mean, it was a really pretty plant, but yeah, it didn't make it at all. Very fussy, crisped up at the drop of a hat, and it's no longer with us. It's no longer with us. It went to the big planty heaven in the sky. So none of those 3 anthuriums are with us. We are 0 for 3 on all those ones that I picked up at the pop-up in January. So I had really enjoyed the process of, believe it or not, even though it sounds hairy, I enjoyed the process of ordering and acclimating those anthuriums. I really enjoyed getting them to adjust to my environment, and I actually think that's how I learned a lot of what I came to know about plants. I learned so much from that process about plants, about how resilient they are, about how they adjust to my environment, what and what not to do, when to panic, when to see it through. It sort of took the hobby to a whole different level for me. And so when I saw that Ecuagenera was having a summer pop-up, I thought, okay, let's go again. So in May, I ordered 8 plants. 8 plants, again, a mix of anthuriums and philodendrons. This time, for the first time ever, I even threw in a Monstera. Because again, this was at a time when some of these things were difficult to get here. You just couldn't find them anywhere. So, you know, I just ordered willy-nilly. The first of the plants I ordered was an Anthurium cupulispathum. Now, if you've ever seen Anthurium cupulispathum, you know that if you live in a 2-bedroom apartment, you have no business ordering this plant. It was a ridiculous choice on my part. I just wanted it. I mean, I just saw it. I saw the crazy size of the plant and I thought, well, I'm having that. So I ordered a cupulispathum. Now, I'm not entirely unreasonable, right? I thought to myself, if I order a seedling, I buy myself some time before it gets big. This time around, I changed my acclimation tactics. What I realized was acclimating them in perlite and then transitioning them to aroid mix was too much fussing about for the plants. It really, really decreases your odds of success if you do it like that. What I found to be better, what I decided to do going forward was to keep them in water for 24 hours. This allowed me to see if there were any breaks in the roots. When you import anthuriums, the roots, because they're fat, they can get broken very easily, but it doesn't always show up right away. Sometimes it takes 24 hours for you to realize that actually these roots are broken, they're gonna rot, they're dead. So that extra rehydration time is good so that you can see where the breaks are, you can cut off what's bad and just start from scratch. I kept the cupulispathum in water for 24 hours and then I just shoved it in aroid mix. It took to it like a dream. This is a plant that roots. This is a plant that if I threw it from my window onto the pavement, it probably would just put out roots and grow. This plant does not care if it's winter, spring, summer, whatever. I pulled it out from the grow tent almost immediately. And as soon as I saw a root in the potting mix, I pulled it out, put it out here in the living room. Boom, it was fine. It was fine. Granted, that was the weather was already warm. So I ordered them in May and I picked them up in June. So it's already warm. Maybe that was a factor, but this is a plant that never gave me any trouble. All it did is put out leaf after leaf. The biggest problem I had with this plant is I couldn't keep up with its watering needs because it grows these big, crazy roots. And if you don't water it, it gets annoying. It doesn't crisp, none of that. It just kind of droops a little bit. And so, yeah, this was a plant that is just is not the right size for this house. It's too big. Anyway, so I had it out here in front with, it had like 8 crazy, massive, ridiculous leaves, and was basically taking over the living space, which the living space is not large, and the kids play all kinds of games in here. It was getting torn up, trashed. It's a very strong plant, by the way. It's a great one for that kind of thing. It did not suffer a minute. It did not miss a beat. However, it just wasn't practical. So I moved it to the corner. I chopped off 4 of its leaves. So here it is. I mean, it's still ridiculous, right? These, it's just in the corner, being ignored on a daily basis. I do not remember to water it. Look, this is the stem. As you can see, it would love a bigger pot than what I've got it in. It's not happy. It's struggling, and yeah, I'm doing this plant so dirty. It's not even funny. So I need to either revive it or, you know, give it to someone who will put in the effort that it really needs to be great. This one leaf looks horrendous. I should probably just chop this off. And these others are just, they're literally mashed up in a corner over there. But the plant just does its own thing. So yeah, this is the Popup spectrum. It's still okay. It's still okay. I've accepted that this plant is not going to live in my apartment long term. It just doesn't make sense to have it here. So I think what I'll do is I'll clean it up, I'll rehabilitate it a bit, and then I will probably move it to, I'll probably move it downstairs to our building's lobby, or maybe have them put it outside for the summer. It might like that. I don't know. But I just think it could probably do really well. It could grow huge and be really happy somewhere. But that somewhere is not in my apartment. So the next plant on the list I ordered was a Monstera subpinnata. I took one look at this when I opened it, and I knew that I was in trouble, right? I tried everything to rehabilitate this plant, but it just wasn't having it. This entire set of imports was very poor. I opened the package and there were so many yellow leaves, brown leaves. Everything looked awful, actually. I contacted Ecuagenera and they offered to refund me if I would send the plants that I was unhappy with back. In the end, I think I would have had to pay for the shipping. It was all very weird. In the end, I just decided it just wasn't worth the hassle of sending them back, and I was just going to try to rehabilitate them. If I could go back, I probably should have sent them back. But there were only, I think there were only like 2 or 3 that were really horrendous. The others were okay, you know, like they didn't look great, but whatever. Anyway, this Monstera subpinnata looked terrible, and I think it lasted like 2 days. It lasted 2 days and then it was gone. Done. So I put it in water. I don't remember, I don't think I gave it the bubbler, but it was my first and only experience importing a Monstera, and I decided that wasn't for me. To be honest, I'm not that much of a Monstera girl. I know that sounds crazy because I'm standing in front of a huge one, but in general, apart from Deliciosa, I don't really care about the rest. Like, I have a Thai constellation, but that's the type of Deliciosa, right? I don't care about the rest. I don't know why. It's just not my thing. They all look the same to me. I don't care about Monstera. So I imported this subpinnata. It didn't make it. I thought the leaf shape of that one was cool. I thought it'd be a nice addition to the space, but yeah, it went and that was the end of that. And now you can find these locally very easily. So if I wanted one tomorrow, I wouldn't have to import it, would I? So yeah, lesson learned, don't import Monstera. The next plant that I imported in that batch was this Anthurium longistrosum. I never know how to say that correctly. Anthurium longistrosum. It was a seedling. Look, here it is. It was so tiny, cute and green and tiny. I knew absolutely nothing about this plant. To be perfectly honest, I chose it because it was cheap as chips on the site. I don't remember how much it was. I think it was like $9. It was so cheap compared to all the other plants at the time. You know, don't forget that this is at the height of plant mania when everything was insanely expensive. It was so cheap. I thought, well, you know, it's worth just giving it a try to see what it would turn out like, right? This one, was also it was an easy acclimation. It acclimated very easily. It was doing okay in the tent, no problem. I moved it from the grow tent. I think it was probably end of August, maybe September, when I moved it out into open air. I put it in my bedroom. Oh no, it was in the living room at first. It was in the living room, and then it was growing. It was doing okay. It was one of those plants that you just forget to water. It was in a corner somewhere. I moved it to my bedroom because I thought, it'd be easier to remember to water it there. Where is Anthurium longistipitatum today? This is what she looks like today. This is her latest leaf. It's crisped up, it hit the grow light and got burned, unfortunately. Otherwise, who knows how impressive it might have been, but this is the one from before that. As you can see, they're starting to approach the grow light, so I need to shift things because they're suffering a little bit of crisping. Also, it's growing in this tiny pot that I can't even keep moist. It's always dry. Look, it's super dry right now. This pot dries out lickety split. I need to repot this. It needs repotting in a bigger pot. Once I get it into a bigger pot, it will, I think, the leaves will, I think, stop suffering all these crispies, because this is not a plant that crisps up very easily. Actually, it's super easy care. The leaves stay nice and juicy. This is an anthurium that can take a serious amount of neglect. So this is a really good one for beginners. Very, very easy to care for. Again, it started off from a tiny seedling and now it is almost as tall as I am. And I'm not short, so it's a big boy. But it's great for apartment because it grows. It's got these really, really, really long petioles. Like, the stems are crazy. It's so long. But the leaves themselves they're big, but they're not crazy. So it's manageable. I've got mine sort of bunched together like this. I added a stake because it's a very gangly plant. And I've got them bunched like this just to keep it more under control so it doesn't, fan out like a spider. But it's great for a corner. You stick it in the corner and it looks really impressive, actually. I'm going to repot it soon. And then I think it will be even more incredible. Beautiful plant. It's climbing up, so I could even chop it and have two of them. There's an idea. I might chop it. I might air layer it, grow some extra roots, and then chop it. I think that this is a plant that would do very well with that kind of thing. And you can just have a few of these in corners all over. It's a great plant for filling out available space. So yeah. This is one of my favorite imports because I chose it for no reason, like at random. Like, there was literally no reason to choose this plant. It just happened to be cheap, and it's turned out to be a banger. I'm so impressed. Ignore this little burn bit. Pretend this isn't here. Aside from this, it's a grade A banger. It's a beautiful plant. Okay, the next anthurium I ordered was one that I saw on Jasmina Lowe's page, her channel. If you haven't seen her channel, you need to check it out. It's the most hilarious thing ever. But she also imports lots of plants or buys them here and mainly from Ecuador. And her take on the whole process is just pure comedy. I promise you, you won't regret it. Anyway, she had this plant and I saw it. I mean, it's absolutely stunning. I think she and I have quite similar taste in plants. Yeah, I ordered this plant. It's the Anthurium agerastachium velvety. Anthurium agerastachium velvety is it's the most gorgeous plant. It came and I was instantly in love. I acclimated it in my tent. It grew roots, it did okay. And then I pulled it out of the tent and I put it on my anthurium shelf in my bedroom and it was fine. Did okay. It didn't ever grow a leaf, but it didn't decline, just did nothing and sat there and looked pretty. Where is Anthurium agerastachium velvety today? Well, I went on holiday in summer of 2023, and yeah, there were some casualties. And agerastachium velvety is no longer with us. It's gone to that great planty castle in the sky. But it was gorgeous while it lasted. I enjoyed it. I have no regrets. My only regret is Ecuador don't seem to have this plant anymore. I can't find it anywhere. So if anyone knows where I can get an Nigraspectrum velvety, tell me. I'd love to buy another one and just have it sit on my shelf and do absolutely nothing but look stunning. I don't mind. Totally worth it. Plant number 16 was also an Anthurium argyrostatium, but it wasn't velvety, it was just the regular kind. Anthurium argyrostatium. I bought this one and I thought, if the velvety is so pretty, the regular argyrostatium will probably be nice, right? This is one of the two plants that arrived from Ecuador looking an absolute fright. I looked at it and I knew it wasn't going to make it. Like it was shocking. It wasn't even yellow, it was brown, like dried from the inside out. Terrible. So I sat it in water, it hung on for a while. Eventually it declined before I could even transfer it to aroid mix. It never really grew. No, that's not true. It grew lots of roots in the water actually. It did okay, but I transferred it and it just didn't make it. It was never giving what it was supposed to give to begin with. So Anthurium argyrostatium also is no longer with us. Has gone up to that great planty castle in the sky. On this one, do I have regrets? I probably should have just bitten the bullet. I probably should have just sent it back to Ecuador and eaten the shipping fee and at least got some money back out of it. Or made them send me another one, you know. I don't know. I think I was just so flustered and frustrated that I didn't, but I wouldn't buy it again. It's just okay. The Velvety is a stunner. The regular one, it's just okay. Change my mind. If you have a nice Argyrostatium, I'd love to see it. But yeah, I won't be getting that one again. It's gone. It's done. I don't mind. And the next anthurium that I got was a tiny seedling. It was a magnificum verde. Now, at the time, and probably still, there was a lot of debate about whether Ecuagenera's version of a magnificum verde is a true magnificum verde. It just looks like a magnificum to me. I mean, it's not very silvery, but it's not dark either. So I don't know. It looks all right. So I got it. It was actually, this is one of those plants that in my grow tent was flourishing, thriving, just leaf after leaf after leaf. Crazy. Then I brought it out here and it really struggled. I think I brought it out in winter. I don't know why I keep doing that, but I brought it out. It definitely struggled with the changing humidity, you know, the up and down weather. And it's, you know, it did all right, but it never really thrived again, which is odd because before it was doing amazingly well, like flourishing. And then it just became a bit of a nothing plant that just sat in the corner looking crispy and sad. I don't know why. So, where is my Anthurium magnificum verde today? Here she is. I cut off all her crispy leaves. I mean, this one is still crispy, but the ones I cut off were crazy. They were so bad. So, yeah, she's still not, I think I'm still not doing optimally on the water. I'm sure if I put this plant in pond, it would be just fine, but I don't use that, so it just has to deal with what I have. The roots look pretty good. It seemed happy. They're not furry, so I'm sure that they're happy, but they could be happier. I'll probably repot it again shortly. Just kind of refresh the soil a bit, really. Doesn't have enough roots for a true repot, but I might try to encourage them to be happy. I don't know how. Or maybe I won't. Maybe I'll give it a pot extender. Give it something nice and fluffy on top with a pot extender. And that might help it to feel more settled. Maybe over the summer it will decide to go back to its former glory and start giving me nice leaves. I must confess, I'm not that bothered because this is a plant that will get huge and I don't really mind delaying that process for a bit. So as long as I mean, I want it, I still want to keep it, but I don't mind if it takes its time recovering. It's all right, isn't it? So yeah, here's my magnolia. I still have it. The next plant I imported in that batch was an Anthurium Ivan Portile. Now this plant is probably one of the easiest anthuriums you'll ever grow. It was such an easy acclimation, such an easy import, did really well. I'm not even going to draw it out. This also suffered in the great summer anthurium massacre of 2023, when I went to Colombia and left other people to water my plants. It perished. It's no longer with us. It's gone to the great planted castle in the sky, sadly. I would repurchase this one. It was such an easy care plant. I don't think it was anything spectacular. I think it was just okay to look at. But then again, it never got super mature, so I couldn't really see what it could become. I only saw what it was at the time. It was okay. When I opened the next plant that I had imported, it looked so crazy in the shipment that I was stressed. It was a Philodendron SP Colombia. I looked at it, it was like yellow leaves everywhere. The roots were all dried out. Philodendrons, when you import them, the roots tend to dry out just like that because the roots are so fine. Anthurium roots tend to do better. So the roots were completely dried out. The plant was just, it looked crazy. And I thought for sure, I was like, oh, this plant's a goner. Well, I rerouted it in water, like I do with all my philodendrons, and it bounced back so easily. So easily. It put out lots of roots, and then it started uncurling this really pretty leaf. So I thought I'll give it a moss pole. I gave it one of those plastic-backed moss poles, but it wouldn't climb the pole. And then I did some reading, and people said it was a crawler. So I thought, okay, it's a crawler. So I unpotted it took it off the moss pole, potted it just into a small, like a round pot, but like a bit of a shallower one, and put it here in the living room. And it did, honestly, it did really well, really well. It just took to living room conditions like a dream. Very, very easy to care for. We had a few mishaps where it was getting too much sun, and I had to pull it so far back into the room you wouldn't believe it. This is not a plant that likes sun at all. So I pulled it really far back into the room, and then that was it. I was really happy. Where is SP Colombia today? Well, I mean, if you watch my channel at all, I'm sure you've seen it, so you know it's still with us, right? Here she is. She's here, large and in charge. She's got some of these brown spots from too much sun, from the too much sun incidents, and also some run-ins with spider mites, which if you have philodendrons, there's going to be spider mites, but I don't, it's fine. And she, ever since the initial refusal to climb, started growing L-shaped and now obviously needs some kind of support. So I think a repot and a moss pole are in her future. To be honest, I'm leaning towards giving her a chop. She's just so big. She's so big, and I have limited space. I'm not sure if I'm gonna keep, if I want an SP Colombia that's big like this. You know what I mean? Like I love it when they have 4 or 5 leaves. That's my ideal. So sorry, I'm inspecting. I think I see pests. I think I see spider mites. Annoying. Anyway, here she is, SP Colombia. This is the newest leaf right here. And honestly, don't be surprised if I air layer this and just chop it right here. That would have surprised me. But yeah, this is my SP Colombia. Still with us. Big girl. Big girl. The 20th one on this list is another anthurium imported as a seedling. Anthurium warocqueanum. Warocqueanum, the queen anthurium, a tiny little seedling. Now with Ecuagenera, you never really know whether the seedling is going to be this big or this big. And people had been having success ordering queen anthurium seedlings, and they were quite sizable. So I thought I'd be cheeky and order one. At the time, queen anthuriums were very expensive, very, very expensive, super pricey. So this was the only way to get one for anything reasonable. I ordered it, and it was so tiny. I was kind of disappointed. But that turned out to be a blessing, because I've found that with queen, the smaller the better in terms of having it do well in your environment. So I actually potted it up into aroid mix right away. I think I kept it in water for like 3 days and then just put it in aroid mix. And the queen, you want to know where she is now? She's never looked back. Most recently in this video, I repotted her for the 3rd time and gave her a moss pole. She lives in my grow tent along with the waterburyanum, but let me show you how she's doing so you'll see why I'm saying but. I mean, she's massive, isn't she? Ridiculous. This is the latest leaf. It's just too big for the grow tent now. It's too big. And Anthurium warocqueanum is one of those plants that the most important thing for this plant is airflow. And so the bigger it gets, the more cramped it is in that tent, the less airflow, which means the less perfect leaves are. And that's when you start to see like fungal and weird things. I mean, she still looks good, but like the truth is that I don't think she can live in that grow tent much longer. And so I'm going to have to chance pulling her out and just having her live in open air, which she can, but all these beautiful leaves you see right now, I think they're all probably going to be crispy creams when I pull her out. She's going to suffer. So get ready to see some ugly queen for a while, but eventually she'll bounce back and she'll deal with the environment, you know. So yeah, here's my queen. The next plant I imported after that was another Anthurium forgetii. Am I a glutton for punishment or what? So at this point, my first forgetii had, I think it had died back to a stump and I was just regrowing it. And I thought, I wasn't sure if it was going to make it or not. So I thought I better get another one. So I imported another Anthurium forgetii white stripes. This one also, it acclimated okay. It just sat there and did nothing for the longest time. Just didn't do anything. It didn't die. It didn't grow a leaf. It didn't grow any roots that I could see. It just did okay. And I eventually took it out of the grow tent, threw it out of the grow tent, and just put it on the shelf in my bedroom, where it continued to do nothing. Nothing. Well, after doing nothing for a long time, it finally started putting out leaves. So it put out this half leaf, which came out all curled up and crispy and struggling. And then it put out another one that was a little bit more whole until eventually it finally put out an entire leaf. Where is the Anthurium forgetii today? Here she is. Here she is. Look at this leaf. First of all, this leaf is massive for me, massive for her. It's a really good size. It's recognizable as a forgetii. It's an entire leaf. So this is the half crispy one. And then there was this one, 3/4, right? So we were getting there. And then there was this one, which was basically whole, but I don't know, something happened to the top and it went a bit weird. But then there was this one. And this is the one that gives me hope that we're on track. We're going to be fine. I can also finally see her roots coming in. Once the roots start hitting the side of the pot, you know the plant's going to be fine. So she's got some roots. She's got this nice fat one here. She does need some soil on top to encourage more growth, but I think she's going to have a pretty good summer. So I don't want to jinx it, but it looks like this forgetii is doing all right in my head. After that, there were two strap-leaf anthuriums, Anthurium ceronii and Anthurium friedrichstahli. Anthurium ceronii, I don't know anyone who has it actually. I just went through a phase where I was ordering every strap leaf I could find that wasn't a Wendlingery because that one was too expensive. I just was ordering anything if it had strappy leaves. So I didn't know what they would look like, but they acclimated super easily. They grow on shelves in my bedroom. I still have them. They're still with me. They're growing fine. Like, you want to see them? This is the ceronii. It's a weird, wonderful plant. It's stubbier strap leaves, but they're still strappy. Like, very, very pretty plant. And yeah, here she is. Just hangs out on the shelf in my room. I'm actually about to repot this plant this weekend, so I'm sure we'll see a growth spurt soon. She's ready. This is my friedrichstahli. I just repotted this plant actually in this video. This was one that I repotted just because I was doing a lot of repotting. I didn't even really think much of it, and I didn't think it necessarily needed it, but it has shocked me because ever since I repotted it, it's just drinking. It's almost like it was in the desert, parched, and I've given it water and I unstoppered it, and now it's going crazy for water. It's already putting out these big fat roots. So I know it's thrilled with the repot. There are two plants in this pot, that's why it looks extra full, but ever since I repotted it, it's pushing out leaves like crazy. Crazy. New leaf. Oh no, that's an inflorescence, sorry. New leaf. Yeah, it's doing very well. Check back in a few months because it wouldn't surprise me if this one gives Pallidiflorum a run for its money. It's beautiful, no? And then after that, I imported a philodendron plumanii, which I sat in water for a long time, because I don't even know why I got it. I got a few philodendrons in this batch. I think they were all on sale. But this one, I potted up in one of those long clear pots in this video. And it took to it actually. It's doing pretty well. I still have it. It sits on the shelf in my bedroom. I'll pop a picture here because it's currently being treated for pests. I don't want to bring it in here. I'd show it to you now, but yeah, I don't want to risk everything else. So this is the only plant in this video that I'm not actually going to show on camera, but I still have it. It's doing really, really well. Sure, it has a pest or two right now, but this is actually a very, very easy philodendron. Super easy. It's growing in not that much light and it does not care. Yeah, so that one imported really well and I still have it. That same batch, I also got a philodendron squamicaule blushing. Beautiful. This plant, I don't think it even made it 48 hours before it shriveled up and expired. And even on the Ecuagenera side, they had all these disclaimers and everything, and I thought I'd give it a try anyway. Mistake, there was no point. It just declined and it's gone. It's gone. I don't have it anymore. Squamicaule blushing 1 FA0. I then got a philodendron serpens. Actually, I thought this was going to be very difficult, and it turned out to be a little bit easier to care for than I expected. But I just didn't like the growth habit as much as I thought I would. I thought this would be one of those plants that was weird and wonderful, and I'd really enjoy that about it, but actually didn't care for it. So yeah, I gave it away. Sorry, serpents, you're not welcome in my jungle. Got rid of her, she's no longer here. And then to round out the philodendron purchases in that load, which I don't know why I bought so many philodendrons that time. That's not like me. I bought this warocqueanum. It was so pretty. This is the one that I was worried about. I thought it'd be really hard to acclimate, but it acclimated like a dream. It's pretty easy to grow in water. I put it on a pole and it was doing okay, but let me tell you, from the minute I got this plant to the minute I got rid of it, it had spider mites like 7 times. I'm not kidding. It just had, I don't mind spider mites here and there because I'm used to it, but this was one of those plants. Frydek is like this too. Every time you look at it, there are spider mites. It drives me nuts. And I just didn't have patience for it. I just didn't want to deal with that, so I got rid of it. Warocqueanum, you're not welcome. Too much hassle with the pests. I just could not be bothered. I got rid of it. I had lost all patience for it. Warocqueanum is no longer with us. It went to that great planty castle in the sky. It's not here anymore. Warocqueanum doesn't live here anymore. And then the next anthurium I got after that was an anthurium bomboicens. And this was so beautiful when it came. It acclimated really, really well. It was growing well for a while. Everything was good. And then, I don't remember what happened. I don't remember why it died back. Something happened. I think either I neglected it, something went wrong, and it died back to a stump. But bomboicens is a very resilient anthurium. So like the forgetii, I was able to just put it in some tree fern, cover it, forget about it for a while, and it popped out 2 new growth points. So bomboicens is making a comeback, and pretty soon I'm going to have 2 plants. Let me show you. The next after that was Anthurium moranense. At this time I was looking for anthuriums with interesting shapes. I just thought, bring some visual interest to the jungle. Moranense did not make it out of the grow tent. I don't know what happened with that one. Again, I think it was a dud because it just never acclimated. It's not like it acclimated and I potted, it just never ever did well. And yeah, that one didn't make it. It's just gone to the great planty castle in the sky. RIP Anthurium moranense. I don't think I'll try again because I now have that philodendron. I forget what it's called. I'll put the name of the philodendron with the fingers, which basically scratches that exact same itch. So I don't need you, moranense. After Anthurium moranense, I got an Anthurium warocqueanum esmeralda. Now this one had a decent size root ball on it, and the roots were healthy when I got it, so I decided to just chance acclimating it in ambient in my living room, and it was a crispy mess for a year and a half. Struggle bus, struggle bus, struggle bus. But where is Anthurium warocqueanum Esmeralda today? Here she is. Here she is. You know what? After struggling for ages, cat's out the bag. She's doing okay, you know? She probably could do with some kind of a repot. I just topped off her soil to encourage some of the aerial roots to push out new growth, which I hope it will. But this is the latest leaf. This grew in February maybe, or March, I don't know. Not too shabby, right? Not too shabby. It looks pretty good for growing out here in open air. It's definitely not as nice as the queen I'm growing in my tent, right? You can tell that the conditions are not optimal, but here's its first inflorescence. So I would say it's doing fine. It's adapted fine. The original leaves that it came with all fell off one by one, but these new leaves aren't bad either, right? So Warocqueanum Esmeralda is fine. She's doing great. After that, I got an Anthurium luxurians. It was this tiny, tiny little seedling, which was all I could afford, right? Luxurians was super expensive at the time. So yeah, I got the seedling. I was worried that this was going to be difficult. Let me tell you, this plant is a dream. It acclimated so easily. So it took, I think I pulled it out of the grow tent within a couple of weeks. Threw it on a shelf in my bedroom where there's almost no light, and not one beat did this plant miss. Where is it today? Here she is. This is her. She is doing so well. I just gave her a top up of soil, and she's rooting into it nicely. She's honestly in a location where more light would be nice, but you wouldn't even know it because she just does her thing. She's just a very, very, very unfussy plant, you know? She's got a few blemishes from where she's touching the grow light at the top of that shelf, but small price to pay, really. Such a beautiful plant. So yeah, she's great. After that, I got an Anthurium Besseii Af. Whew, this plant stressed me out. I couldn't figure out, I was like, I did not put this one in the grow tent. It just went straight into my bedroom. And that was probably a mistake because water, humidity, this, that. I spent ages agonizing. I think it took me at least a year and a half to acclimate this plant, you know. Anyway, she's still with me today. What does she look like now? I recently repotted her. Well, I wouldn't say recently, late last year. I repotted her, put her in a soil that had a lot more tree fern in a bigger pot so that the roots could have room to grow. She rewarded me with this leaf. Then she went basically dormant for the rest of winter, and I was left dealing with these struggle bus leaves from when she was crisping up. But then spring came, and look what she gave me. Sorry. Is this not the most perfect leaf you've ever seen? Look at her. She spits out this leaf like it's nothing. Not a crisp, nothing. Just pure perfection. And I'm like, is this the same plant? Yes, it is. She's just fully adjusted to my space, and she's happy now. So here she is. She's working on another leaf at the moment. If it looks anywhere near as good as this one, I mean, I'll be in business. And then I'll start cutting off some of these older ones. I left them on because I just thought maximum help photosynthesizing can't hurt, right? After that, I ordered a veitchii seedling. This veitchii seedling was doing really, really well, but it perished in the great Anthurium massacre of 23 when I went to Colombia. So sadly, it's no longer with us. Luckily, I have another veitchii because, you know, sometimes I double up. And that one's doing great. That one also came to me as a tiny seedling, but wasn't an import. I got that one from Gabriella Plants. And that one's fine. It's growing really well. It's in my bedroom. I'll show it a different day, I guess. But yeah, that one's fine. So yeah, the other veitchii is no longer with us. It's gone to the great planty castle in the sky. In December, I placed another order with Ecuagenera because I'm a glutton for punishment. And I trekked all the way back out to New Jersey to pick these things up in January. But this time I dragged my husband. I made him drive me out there. And one of the first things that I got, at this time, there were very few hybrids on the market. That wasn't, you know, it wasn't a thing. It was an Anthurium crystallinum crossed with Besseii Af. I saw it and I just thought, I have to have this. It was so pretty. Look at it. Anyway, she is still here. She's still thriving. What is she up to today? Well, she is. These are her roots. She is desperate for a repot. I'm waiting for nuclear pots that are big enough to accommodate her. This plant is hella thirsty. So thirsty. It's unbelievable. This is her latest leaf. It's so beautiful, but it got damaged because, one, this plant does not have the water. It's very hard to keep it watered. Look, it's dry and I watered it yesterday. Number two, this bit was rubbing against the already established leaves and I didn't prop it up to keep it free of them in time. So it's damaged. But it's still look how beautiful it looks regardless. So I know the leaf that comes after this is going to be spectacular. This is it. Crystallinum ex Bessiae af. Okay, so the next plant was an Anthurium villaniorum. And it acclimated easily, just as expected. No trouble with it at all. It is a slow grower, so it didn't do much of anything for a while. I transitioned it out of the grow tent and onto the shelf in my bedroom where it continued to not do much of anything. Eventually, I moved it from what was my former potting mix that I was using into a more tree fern focused mix. I think it might just be in pure tree fern actually. And it did start to, grow some nice roots and make some movement. So I think after a year and a half, it's finally settled in. Let me show you what it looks like today. Yes, it's still with me. The suspense is gone. The villaniorum is still with me. This is the villaniorum today. When I got it, it had, I think, 3 leaves, and now it has, 5 leaves. It's not actually 5, it's deceptive, because it's not 5 new leaves, though. It's due for a repot. This is the root system. So it's a lot happier than it was. It needs a significantly bigger pot, and what's happened is it has pupped, and there are now, from what I can tell, there are now I think 3 different growth points happening in here. I'm going to repot them because the roots are actually fighting for space now, and I can't imagine that this many plants will actually thrive without more space. So watch out for that video when I repot a few anthuriums. If you look in here, you'll see this is a new leaf on this one. On this one, it's got a new leaf. But there's also another pup, an entirely different plant coming in. So it seems to be pupping like mad. I don't know why that is, but I'm not mad at it. Definitely time for a repot though. So yeah, the Anthurium villaniorum was an excellent import. I think I would say this is a good choice to import. You must be patient. It's just not the fastest of growers. I do like the leaves when it does start growing. I think they're quite different from a lot of other anthuriums. This is one that it might be worth importing in a larger size, just because this was a seedling, a baby when I got it. It's such a slow grower. If you want, it looks to me, it's like it's going to take ages to have decent sized leaves. So just something to think about. And in that same December 22nd order, being a glutton for punishment and quite stubborn and refusing to accept no for an answer, I ordered, guess, if you guessed right, there is no prize, but it means you know me really well. I ordered another Anthurium crystallinum. I know. I don't know why I keep doing it to myself. Before I even tell you what happened with it, let me show you. Look at how beautiful this crystallinum is, right? How I saw this, I unpacked it, I saw it, it was insanely beautiful, and I thought, yes, I've made the right choice. It's stunning. Stunning Anthurium crystallinum, really beautiful. So I potted it up, and I put it in the grow tent to acclimate and do its thing. And where's Anthurium crystallinum today? She's not with us. She's not with us. She is not in the room with us. She's gone to the great planty castle in the sky. I don't know what happened. I don't even remember why I lost this one. I couldn't even tell you what happened to it. That's how many crystallinums I've lost. I don't know why I keep trying. But, yeah, anthurium crystallinum did not make it. RIP crystallinum number, God knows how many. I won't even count. It's too painful. And then the next plant I got in that order, plant number 37, is Anthurium. Here in my lens. Even just saying the name of this plant makes me laugh, because this plant is horrendous. I think I've only ever had one other plant that I hated as much as this one. Yeah, it was awful. You know, it came with, one of its leaves was yellowing and crispy. I wouldn't say it was like stunning to begin with, but wow, I tried everything to make this plant happy. It just was never happy. It was just always crispy, crinkly. The leaves would come out funky. I'd try again. It would do more funky things. It's just a terrible plant all around. Late last year, after stressing myself out endlessly about this plant, I said to myself, plants are supposed to bring you joy. If it's not bringing you joy, if it's making your life miserable, if it's not even an enjoyable challenge, why would you put yourself through it? Like, why would you torture yourself over something that's supposed to bring you joy? And so I took the Anthurium permalense and I excused it from my apartment. Got rid of it. It's no longer with us. I'm not even remotely sad about it. I do not miss it. I thought it was a horrible plant. I don't like it. If anyone knows how to grow that plant, just for the sake of, as a matter of interest, I would be intrigued to know what your experiences are and what you do besides pawn, if that's what you do. In the same order, I got this Anthurium exstipulatum that actually, this is one of those that never recovered from import. It just did not acclimate properly. Again, I don't really know anything about growing that plant. I just liked the look of the foliage and decided to give it a try. And that's the beauty of importing. It can be very hit or miss. Sometimes it's just nice to experiment really and see what things are like. So I gave it a try. It didn't work out because it just completely, I think after a couple of days, it was in the grow tent, but it just never bounced back. Just expired after a couple of days. What can you do? Win some, lose some. So yeah, I don't have the Anthurium exstipulatum. I would try that one again because I'm not sure if it was just the specimen that I got that wasn't healthy or if that's just a plant that's difficult to import. I don't know, but sometimes you have to try a couple of times before you know what the answers are. So I'd definitely be willing to give that one a try again. Then my next set of imports were in March of 2003. And that's actually the last time I imported plants from Ecuagenera. So up until this point, all my imports have come from Ecuagenera. March 2003 was my last Ecuagenera batch, maybe I'm due to do it again soon, who knows. Anyway, so in March 2023, I got an Anthurium longissimilobum seedling. Now, the longissimilobum, about a couple of years before that, was really, really expensive and popular. It was being marketed as the spiritus sancti of anthuriums. So, I mean, it has these beautiful long lobes when it's mature, but it was just prohibitively expensive, so I never got one. A seedling went on sale for a very, very, very reasonable price. I think it was super cheap, but it was tiny, teeny weeny. And so I ordered it with the understanding that these do not grow particularly fast at all, so you kind of have to be patient. And so I acclimated it in my grow tent. It did quite well. This is a plant that's prone to root rot. It likes to stay on the drier side, so it can be tricky to figure out the balance to, wet enough so it grows, but not too dry so it doesn't rot. It's kind of similar to the veitchii, to be honest. I think it does like water. I think it's all about getting the potting mix right. Anyway, the longissimilobum did fine when I had it in the grow tent, and then I transferred it to open air on my shelf, and Where's the longistipitatum today? Right here. She's doing fine. But they weren't kidding when they said this is a slow grower. It grows very, very slowly. I also have it in quite low light though, so I don't take my word for it. It could be faster with more encouragement. It needs something here to give it more substrate so that it can root into, but otherwise it's doing really well. This is the latest leaf, so still small but starting to get a bit longer, and this is still soft, so hopefully it will still grow some more. And one thing I love about this plant is the shape of the leaf with that stripe down the middle and the dark. I mean, it's divine. It's so pretty. I'm very happy with this one. This is one of my favorites because it's just so easygoing, and I just really like the leaves. In that same order, I got an Anthurium warocqueanum x waterburyanum, which I think Ecuagenera also calls Anthurium equaclean. And that one it rooted really easily. I had it in the grow tent. I actually gave it a wee moss pole, one of those plastic backed ones, and it was fine. It was doing really, really well. And then I went away. Someone was watering them for me, and I think it got overwatered. Anyway, when I came back, I looked in on it, and it was dropping leaves very rapidly. When an anthurium starts dropping leaves, multiple leaves out of nowhere really quickly, you know that there's probably stem rot at play. So I had a look at the stem, and it was completely rotted. There was no saving it. It was done, just done. And so I lost it. I was gutted because that one was bouncing back so quickly. It was going to be beautiful. You could just tell. So I'm really quite sad actually that one didn't make it. But I recently replaced it. Let me show you the replacement. This is the replacement I bought. So yeah, replacement's doing fine, and would not surprise me if it puts out a nice good sized leaf for us all to enjoy soon. So yeah, this leaf's a little bit battered from travel, but otherwise, I mean, it's fine. And I've decided to keep this replacement out here in open air in ambient conditions and just adapt it to that. I'm not going to put it in the grow tent. There's just no space in the tent, and this is a hybrid, so it's a lot stronger, and it's just going to have to deal. So yeah. And then after that, my next import after that was, and I think it was the same order, the same March 2023 order. It was an Anthurium forgetii dark form. I know there's something about me, crystallinum and forgetii, and I just keep getting them. I will say with forgetii though, it does seem to always work out in the end, whereas with crystallinum, I haven't been successful yet. So anyway, I got this beautiful Anthurium forgetii because it was the darker form. It didn't have any white veining, and I didn't have one of those in my collection, so it'd be nice to add that. And it was beautiful at first, but obviously as forgetii do, it started acting a fool, and the leaves started crisping. It dropped a couple, the new ones came in wonky. That's just what forgetii does. And in my care, forgetii will do that for a year or two, and then they'll just settle in and be beautiful. So where's the Anthurium forgetii dark form? Where's the Anthurium forgetii dark form today? This is what it looks like now. I mean, so this leaf is struggle bus. No, sorry. This leaf is, look at this leaf. Ridiculous, wonky, and trash. This one was bigger, still struggling. This was the latest. It was a lot better. Still not ideal, but better. I've since moved it from where I had it when it put these out to a different shelf with, I think, more space and just a bit better lighting for it. So we'll see. I think it's happy in the new location because it started growing a nice fat root, and again, you know what that means. When you see the fat roots, you're on the right track. So hopefully she will pretty soon put out a new leaf to show me just how happy she is. And then in July 2023, after swearing off exports for the foreseeable future, I noticed people were jumping on these live sales. that both Ecuagenera and Tropicals, which is another plant supplier in Ecuador, were doing. So lots of people said, oh, the tropical sales are really good, they have really good plants, give it a try. And I had never actually, up until this point, imported from anyone except for Ecuagenera. So I thought, well, I'll give Tropicals a try, right? And so I jumped on the Instagram live, and actually it's a lot of fun bidding on those plants. It's, first of all, they're a lot cheaper on the Instagram live than they are on the plant account. So a good tip is, if you want to buy from Ecuagenera or Tropicals, sometimes it's better to just look at the live sale and compare those prices to what you get on the website. They often have better, bigger plants on live than what you'll get if you just go straight to the website, and they're often a lot cheaper. So there's also lots of random varieties on live that you just don't find on the website. So yeah, it's quite fun. I went on Tropicals live, and I saw, so the first plant that I saw and I bid on was a philodendron lupinum. Now, I have no idea why I bought this plant, because honestly, I don't buy philodendrons anymore. I have quite a few, but I've sort of pivoted my preference and my style, which is probably obvious from the breakdown of this video, to anthuriums. So I almost never buy philodendrons. Philodendrons that I have, I tend to have had for quite a long time. I saw a lupinum and it was tiny, very tiny, and I don't know why I bought it, but I did. Where's philodendron lupinum today? Okay, don't judge me, but this is the part where I exhibit weird behavior, because why have I had this philodendron lupinum in this cup of water since the day I imported it last summer? It's been sat in water since last summer, and in that time it has put out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 leaves, all crazy tiny, obviously, because it's growing in a crappy cup of water and it doesn't have any nutrients, and you know, it's ridiculous. I should pot it up and be done with it, or get rid of it, you know. Poor plant. I may be inspired by this video to actually pot this lupinum up. The actual foliage on this plant is really beautiful, which is probably why I bought it, right? It's like weirdly, I don't know, it's weirdly velvety in a different way from all these other green heart-shaped velvets that I have. And that's why I bought it, but I should really do something with it. Yeah, this is ridiculous. But she's hanging in there. She's hanging in there. This is lupinum. And then on that same live, I saw what I thought was maybe one of the most stunning plants I've ever seen. It had these long, beautiful, velvety green leaves. It was an anthurium, warocqueanum X Cyrenoi, cross the Cyrenoi, and it just looked so different from all the other warocqueanum, Queen Anthurium hybrids that I'd seen. The leaves were a lot narrower and almost shaped like a dagger. It was weird and wonderful, and I thought, oh, I'm gonna try that, because I've had a Cyrenoi in the past that I lost due to someone not watering it while I was away. That seems to be the theme of plants that I lose, unfortunately. I thought, oh, you know, I'll get this hybrid, warocqueanum and Cyrenoi. It's probably easy care. Hybrids are often a lot easier than both their parents to care for, much more vigorous. So I thought this will be vigorous, this will do really well. And I decided to acclimate it in my living room. The plant came in the summer, and so I just thought, well, you know, it's humid enough in here, I'll just acclimate it in the living room. So I never put it in the grow tent. I put it in water for a few days and then potted it for a couple of days, potted it up, and I had it in the living room under a grow light where it didn't grow, it didn't deteriorate. Well, the leaves got a bit crispy, but imports will do that, you know. The leaves it comes with will often suffer, no matter where you have it, no matter what you do. So some of the leaves got a bit crispy, but I just thought, you know, it's fine. That's what imports do. Anyway, it progressively got worse and worse until eventually I admitted defeat and decided to stick it in the grow tent. So I put it in the grow tent. Being in the grow tent did not help. I mean, it helped a little bit, but not that much. There are some plants, like for example the waterburyanum, you throw them in the grow tent, everything's fine. that increased humidity is all they need, and happy as Larry, good as gold. That was not the case for this plant because it just got worse and worse and worse. The leaves were crispy, they were yellow, it would put out new leaves and they would come out all wonky. If you didn't water it like I think I have to water this plant every 2 days or something stupid like that. If it doesn't get water when it wants it, it just, within hours the leaf will crisp up and shrivel and go strange. Where is this plant today? Here it is. So along with Anthurium caramelens, this is the second plant that I hate more than any other plant I've ever owned. I mean, this plant is a nightmare, and you can tell it's not really 100% happy because it doesn't have any of those fat fuzzy roots that I'm hoping for. I see nothing about what's going on with its roots right now, which is really annoying. But look at the leaves, right? Like so it will put out a leaf, which will do really well. And then at the slightest stress, the slightest hint of stress, it will crisp up or, deform weirdly. There are no pests, there are no issues. There were a couple more that were even uglier than this. I chopped them off because I'm not trying to live like that. I cannot stand this plant, it's awful. I haven't reached the point where I'm giving up just yet. I am a glutton for punishment. I have a couple of plants in the tent that I will be moving out, hopefully, soon. And once I move those out, I'm going to put this in a self-watering planter and leave it in there and see if that helps. I don't know. I don't know if it will help. It'd probably still be awful because it's just an awful plant, isn't it? But you never know. And I do want to be able to say that I've tried absolutely everything before I give up on it, because I'm trying to remember just how beautiful it was when I unboxed it and how gorgeous those leaves were. And I want them so badly. Like, unlike the caramelens, I don't think I have anything in my collection that has the vibes that those leaves gave, which you can sort of see with how thin these are, but it's a trash bag. Unfortunately, it's a trash bag. Sometimes you just get trash bag plants, and this is one of them. It's just a horrible, horrible plant. And then last but not least, in April, I somehow found myself on the Tropicals Plants Live. Again. I was looking at their live. Usually I just avoid these now because I'm like, I don't need any more plants. I have so many. It's absolutely ridiculous. Where am I even going to put anything, right? Anyway, I was on this live and he had Anthurium papillilanum. And I have a couple of papillilanum, I hope I'm saying that correctly. I have a couple of papillilanum hybrids, plants that are poppy mixed with, I don't know, crystallinum, or poppy mixed with ace of spades, things like that. I have quite a few, I have a couple of those, but I don't have any that are pure 100% papillilanum, so I thought it might be nice to add one of those to my collection, especially because poppies are quite dark, and I don't have any of those darker anthuriums that you typically see. This is probably because most of my plants have been imported from Ecuador, and most of those dark ones are the Indonesian anthuriums. Anyway, I don't have any of those, and so I thought I'd give this poppy a try at imported. And so it came in, it arrived in pristine condition. So I imported it in April, so last month. It arrived in pristine condition. Like, look what it looked like when I unboxed it. Beautiful, spectacular condition. I had it in water for, I want to say for 48 hours I had it in water just to rehydrate, and I cleaned out the roots, and then I potted it up in pure tree fern, nothing but tree fern. And where's papillilanum today? Here she is. I mean, I don't think I've ever had an import pop off like this, do this well in the space of time that this one has. It has literally been a month, I think a month and a week or something, so it's been here for like 5 weeks max. And in that time, look at the root system that it's developing. It's putting out crazy roots. This plant's gone absolutely mad. When it arrived, this was the newest, it was growing this leaf, and this leaf was still soft. And as is the case with most imports, sorry, not just imports, when you put a plant in the post and it has a new developing leaf, oftentimes that leaf will never become what it could have been, right? It'll just stay soft. So that's what's happened here. This leaf never, it just didn't harden off in the end. But the rest of this Popup, it didn't drop any leaves, not one. And not only did it not drop any, it put out a new leaf. Look at the new leaf. This leaf just grew. This leaf just grew in a couple of weeks ago. I mean, it's such a beautiful color. When I saw this leaf, I knew I made the right choice in importing this plant, because how gorgeous is this, right? I'm very happy with this. This is probably by far and away the best an import has ever gone for me. This one and my Queen Anthurium, those are the two most seamless imports I've ever had, which is wild when you consider the reputation for difficulty that these plants have. But anyway, I'm thrilled with this one. And that's it. So 44 plants in total have been imported. And here's the breakdown of how everything has fared. So actually, it's not bad, and the success rate is higher than I thought, actually. I thought the success rate was going to be about 50-50, but when you consider how many are actual yeetings, that if I wasn't as annoyed by it, I probably could have just kept them and just kept trying or doing different things, and who knows whether they would have shaped up or been fine or not. So it's sort of difficult to say. I'm quite pleased with the ratio. Yeah, not bad, the numbers. Things I've learned from this: philodendrons, this is my opinion, philodendrons are not worth importing. I'd rather just buy them locally or not at all. And it's not because philodendrons are more difficult to rehab than anthuriums. You stick them in water and eventually they bounce back actually just fine. I just don't think it's worth it. I think it takes, the amount of time it takes for them to start looking nice, you know. So they'll grow roots and you'll pot them up, it takes ages, and then they'll put out a horrible leaf and then another one, and eventually they'll put out a nice leaf. But I just can't be bothered, you know. I just don't think the payoff is there with philodendrons. Like, I don't have, it's not usual for imported specimens to end up looking incredible, and so what's the point, right? Whereas with anthuriums, usually by the second leaf, you know, they get it popping. it's worth it. So any future imports you see me doing will probably not be philodendrons. I mean, that being said, I don't know how many philodendrons are in my future to purchase, period. I'm just much more of an anthurium person these days. But I hope you've enjoyed the video. Hope you've learned something from my mishaps or or successes. If you want to see more of my anthuriums, I'll probably be showing them quite soon. But yeah, in the meantime, I think this was informative for all of us. I learned a lot about myself, and maybe I'll try crystallinum again. You never know. You never know. I'm always up for a challenge. Till next time, I'll see you